What's up, people? This is Suki Shinwa, and you're watching me do stuff. This is the third part of my fanfics. It is set in the same time period and in the same place as the second one, only a couple of years after. Please read the warning down in the description. It's a warning for a reason. Please read it. Also, if you have not read the others, please do so before reading this one, because some of the events will not make sense if you have not read the others. Anyways, without further ado, let's get this started. They lived together for about 6 years in the castle Dracula. Suki was happy, even though Vlad was very overprotective. He only let her leave the castle under his supervision, so she had to sneak out frequently. She hadn't gotten caught. Yet. She had snuck out to see some of her friends, and was now coming back. She was scaling the side of the castle to her window, like she had done 1,000,000 times. As she got to the window, which was open because that was how she left it, she climbed through it, shut it, and turned around to climb into bed across the room. But what she saw made her stop. Vlad, lying on his side, facing her on her bed. His expression was a cross between anger and intrigue. Looks like the pup has come back home. He sat up, placing his feet on the floor, his long black hair flowing down his shoulders. Didn't I tell you to stay on the castle grounds? Over the shock of her being found out, Suki quickly recoiled at the Count. You won't let me do anything! I can't run through the forest, I can't see my friends, I can't even look at the people around in the market! What are you scared of? His face grew more angry, but then softened into worry. He walked to her. I'm just afraid of losing you, Vlad said as he brushed a stray hair from her face. Suki looks up at his face. He was smiling sweetly at her. She hugged him, burying her face in his chest. I would never leave you. The only way we could be separated is by death. Her words were muffled in his chest, but the Count could still hear them, clear as a bell. They stood there in the pale moonlight, in each other's embrace. Vlad was the one to retract first. The sun's almost up. We should rest. Suki nodded. He guided her to the bed. But I don't think I can make it to my chamber. May I stay here with you? With an evil smile on his face. Sure, if you want. I don't really care, Suki said as she turned away to get into the bed, trying to hide that she was blushing fiercely. She climbed into her bed. It was a king size, the biggest one she'd ever slept in. It had silk sheets and pillows as fluffy as marshmallows. Once she had gotten settled, she felt cold hands glide over her. Her skin tingled with his touch, and she felt his breath on the back of her neck, giving her goosebumps. Then his hands started to wander, gliding along her stomach, her arms, and her legs. He pressed his body against her. Suki jumped when she felt the bare skin of his chest. Vlad felt her jump, smiling to himself. He gently pulled her closer to him. Shh, it's okay. I won't hurt you. He then licked from the base of her neck to the lobe of her ear. You're so fragile. Feels like if I hold you too tightly, I might break you in half. He then proceeded to nibble on her ear. Suki moaned softly. Vlad whispered into her ear, You're mine. He traced the inside of her leg. The Count started to put his hands up her shirt, but at the last second, Suki stopped him. He sighed. Not tonight, huh? Cuddling it is, then. They lay there for the rest of the night in each other's embrace, Suki's warmth and Vlad's cold. Suki woke to the bright light of midday. Her eyes squinted from the light. She looked over her shoulder to see the Count, but he was nowhere to be seen. Suki stood and stretched her limbs. She yawned loudly. Her yawns were like a dog. Her stomach growled with a low rumble. Right, I haven't had lunch yet. She grabbed her robe at the end of the bed on the post. She made her way to the main dining hall, where Holt had lunch prepared for her. Like always, she was dining alone. Her meal consisted of roasted deer, a small salad, and part of a fresh loaf of bread. Her wineglass was filled with the blood of the deer she was eating. Happily eating her meal, Vlad quietly snuck up behind her, brushing her hair away from her neck. He leaned down close and said, "Hungry today, are we?" Kissing her neck as she swallowed a bite of deer. Where he kissed, the touch lingered. She quickly wiped her mouth and turned to look up at the Count. When she did, her lips met his. As he pulled away, he licked his lips. Wonderful. The taste of your meal lingers on your lips. He wiped a bit of blood that she had missed from the corner of her mouth. As he licked his finger, she said, "And here I thought you wanted to taste me," with a naughty grin on the edge of her lips. He laughed to himself for a few seconds. He pulled a chair close to where she was sitting. She returned to eating. He sat and watched her with happy eyes. After a few minutes of silence, Vlad said, "What do you think about going out tonight?" With a side glance. Suki had already finished her meal and looked up abruptly at the Count. "Really? Are we going to the dance in the square?" she said excitedly, nearly jumping out of her chair. It had been months since Vlad had taken her to a dance. The Count chuckled as he nodded his head. Suki jumped up from her chair to leave. "Then I need to pick a dress!" He stood as she left. "I bought you a new one. It's in your room, on the bed. I hope you like it." He called after her as she left, nearly running. When Suki got to her room, just like Vlad had said, there was a brand new dress lying on her bed. As she got closer to look at the dress, she gasped. The dress was an exact replica of the one he got her years ago, the one from when they first met. A dark blue trimmed with silver. The left shoulder was silver trimmed blue. As she picked it up, she hadn't noticed that he was standing in the doorway. "As you guessed, it's the same as the first. The one that started it all," he said as he walked over to her. "It took a long time to track down the man who made the first, but I managed to get it. I thought you would want another, since the original was torn to shreds by that furry monster." He put his arm around her waist. "I love it," she says in joy. "It's perfect." "Are you going to wear the same as that night?" She turns to look at him. Vlad laughs to himself. "I wouldn't have it any other way." He kisses her deeply. She looked up into his eyes and laid her head on his chest. He wrapped his arms around her waist and set his chin on the top of her head. They stood there for a few minutes. They parted once they saw the sun started to go down. "Get ready and meet me in the library when you're ready," Vlad said as he left the room. Suki walked slowly down the spiral stairs. The Count was there waiting for her. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing her hand gently. "Are you ready to go?" She nodded and followed him to the door, where Holt had the carriage waiting for them. As they rode, Vlad never looked away from Suki. She could feel his eyes on her, but she was used to it. The carriage slowed as they neared the square. When Suki stepped out of the carriage, the people near turned and stared at her and the Count. They were whispering, "Don't worry about them. Let them say what they want," Vlad said as he placed an arm around her waist. He led her to the center area where the dancing was. Milady, may I have this dance? He held his hand out. Suki placed her hand in his, and they walked to the dance floor. They danced near the end until someone yelled, "There he is!" The crowd parted to show two men. "Hurry!" Vlad yelled as he nearly dragged Suki to the carriage. "As fast as you can, old friend," he said to Halt as he got in. Halt sped down the road, up to the castle. The Count kept looking behind them to see if they were being followed, but there was no one in sight. "What's going on? Tell me, who were those men?" Suki pleaded. The Count turned to look at her with a grave face. "They're vampire hunters," he said bluntly. "Once we get into the castle, go into the library. You'll be safe there. If they come, hide. Don't worry about me. Halt and I will try to fight them off. But if we fail, get away from here. Go to a different country. 'Cause they will hunt you down." But I don't want to leave you," she said through her tears. Vlad kissed her forehead. "You have to be brave. If you were hurt, I don't know what I'd do." And at that moment they arrived at the castle. "Go! Run!" he said, pushing her out of the carriage. She looked back, and his face was sad. Suki did as she was told and hid in the dark library. There were many places to hide. She could hear talking outside the window. It was three men. One was the Count's. She walked over to find him facing two other men with all sorts of weapons. They had swords, guns, torches, stakes, and lances. All weapons for fighting a vampire. She watched in awe as the three men stood, waiting for the other to move. She looked on the ground and saw a body laying there. It was Halt. She tried to focus on his body, but it was drawn by the others beginning the fight. They were dashing around, slashing each other, and barely missing each time. After the burst of violence, they paused. "Why have you followed me here? Who are you?" Vlad yelled at the stranger. The other man just laughed. "I guess I can give you the courtesy. I am Abraham Van Helsing, the man who kills the No-Life King." Then, without warning, Van Helsing launches himself at the No-Life King, slashing wildly. "Kill me? Never. I have too much to lose to let you win," the Count said in a mocking tone. It seemed that they were evenly matched, but Suki could see that the Count was losing. It wasn't noticeable to regular people, but for people who were trained to fight, the gradual slowing of the Count was all too clear. Then, out of nowhere, Van Helsing landed a hit across Vlad's chest, spraying blood on the ground. "Damn you! You're using a blessed sword." Usually his wounds would begin to heal almost immediately, but because the sword was blessed, he couldn't heal it. "This is getting interesting," he said with a huge smile on his face as he launched himself at Van Helsing. As they clashed, Vlad faltered. Van Helsing slashed him 3 times across his chest before he could get away. Then Van Helsing reached into his overcoat and pulled out 2 steel spikes. Vlad stepped back and found himself surrounded by a wall of the castle. He was trapped. Vlad looked at the wall. "Well, it looks like I won't be able to keep my promise to her. Damn it." Van Helsing looked at him. "Her? There is no way a heartless wretch like you could have someone he cares for." He pulled out a stake from his coat, walking towards the Count. Vlad laughed. "That's what I thought at first. But then I learned more and more about her. And before I knew it, I had fallen in love." His face softens as he's talking. "Well, I'm sorry for her, because it changes nothing. I still have to fulfill my mission to kill you." Van Helsing raises the stake to strike Vlad's heart. He throws it, and it pierces the Count, who cries out in pain. Vlad haunches over in defeat. He then starts to cry. Not regular tears, but tears of blood. They were streaking down his face. Then, through his tears, he says, "All I wish is to see your face one last time, my dear Suki." As Suki watched the battle close, she started to cry. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she didn't care. It took almost all her strength not to rush out there to save the Count, but his words rang in her ears. "If you were hurt, I don't know what I'd do." She couldn't take it any more of this. She couldn't watch the life drain out of his body. Suki turned away, ran up to her room on the other side of the castle, and picked up a few things that she would need. She was going to run, just like her master told her to. Once she gathered everything, she scaled down the side of the castle. It would be too risky to go out any of the exits, which were near where the battle was. And as she touched the ground, she looked back up to her window. "Goodbye, my master. I swear I will live like you wish me to." And she ran off into the dense woods. Van Helsing walks up to Vlad. He kneels to where they were face to face. "Do you care for her enough to give up anything?" Vlad raises his head to meet eye to eye with him. "Yes, I would. She is my life. The only one that matters." Van Helsing smiles and looks like he's about to laugh. "Well then, if I spare you, then for as long as my family lives, you shall be our slave. Do we have an accord?" Vlad's eyes widen. "If I give you my freedom, I might be able to see her again." Van Helsing nodded. "Then I give it to you without hesitation. We shall seal it in our blood." He places a hand on his chest that is covered in blood, as Van Helsing takes out a knife and slices his hand. Then they clasp hands, sealing the agreement with a blood pact. Van Helsing pulls the stake out of the Count's chest, and after he winces, he looks up to see a full moon. "Suki, my love, I know that we shall meet again someday." Well, that's all for now, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like and comment down below. And if you have some suggestions or questions, feel free to message me, or you can find me on Twitter at WolfWarrior999, both W's capitalized. And once again, this has been Suki Chinois, and I'll see you whenever.